Ladies and gentlemen, I can no longer stay silent anymore. Things are deteriorating and deteriorating quick, and I may just have a few more months or a few more years where I can speak on these things before I won't be able to do it anymore. We are witnessing society rapidly deteriorate. We are witnessing our politicians in the West starting to act like dictators and silencing anybody who questions them. They are starting to tell us what before was good is now bad, and what before was bad is now good. They are destroying people's critical thinking skills by confusing them on what is really reality. And if good men and good women like you that are watching continue to stay silent while the country we once knew and loved, the values we held, everything we stood for, everything that people died for will be all gone. But people, the reason I'm making this video is because over the past week, we have had some new shocking developments to show us that things are escalating and are getting worse. And I've had people tell me, look, Michael, just stay silent on this. Don't speak about this. It's too controversial. You may lose everything that you spent your whole life working for. You may put yourself in danger. But people, guess what? There comes a time in history where you have to start making huge sacrifices. And that's what our fathers and mothers did. They sacrificed their lives so we can enjoy the freedoms that we have today that our leaders so desperately want to take away. So everyone, I will not be silent anymore, and in today's video, we're going to talk about the rapidly deteriorating situation between what's going on with Joe Biden, what's going on with his administration, them starting to arrest political opponents. Like, what the heck is going on, everybody? Yes, Donald Trump's not perfect. Maybe he has done the things they've alleged him of. But you know what? So was Joe Biden. Everything that he's done, his family, the Clintons, they've all done things far worse, and there's probably things they've done that are unimaginable. But guess what? There seems to be a protected class in this country that wants to control and rule your life. And like I said before, I may only have a few months or years left to talk about this before we cannot anymore, and we need to take a stand right now so we don't lose those freedoms. So everyone, we're going to go over some bombshells that Senator Josh Hawley has released on the FBI of them trying to cover up Biden's corruption and also them illegally monitoring US citizens. And then we're also going to go over the Tucker Carlson report, his latest one on Twitter, that is going viral, where he's exposing that Biden is a wannabe dictator. But wait till the end where you hear what Joe Biden says about your children. So everyone, without further ado, let's get into it.
Now you're going back and forth with members of this committee, what's in it. Why don't you just release it? Is it classified?
The document is not classified.
Okay. Will you commit to releasing it?
Senator, we'll take that back and we will work with you in this committee.
How about just a yes or no? Will you commit to releasing this unclassified document that alleges that the President of the United States has taken $5 million or more in bribes from a foreign nation?
The document has already been released pursuant to a subpoena to the House Oversight Committee.
Has it been released to this committee?
We'll work with this committee within the parameters that are established to meet the request.
Will you release the document to the public? It's unclassified. Don't you think the American people have a right to see it?
Senator, the document, as you know, contains sensitive information that has bearing on the life of the source of the information, potentially.
You can redact the source's name. We do this all the time.
In some instances, Senator, and I know you know this, that is not sufficient to protect.
So everyone, let's just pause it there because that is a huge bombshell. The FBI has finally admitted what all these crazy conspiracy theorists have been talking about all along, that they have documents, the documents do exist, that alleges that Joe Biden and his son, Hunter Biden, has been receiving $5 million in bribes. And what terrifies me and what should terrify you, the FBI saying that if we release these documents, this person that leaked this information, guess what? They're going to get killed. Does this sound like a free and democratic country to you, everyone? People that release information on their leader is facing death? No, I don't think so, everyone.
And that's what we strive and work to do each and every day. And I hope you would take that seriously, too.
Oh, I take it very seriously. But I also take seriously the fact that your institution has repeatedly abused its authority, has repeatedly targeted political opponents. Your institution is the one that went to the door of pro-life protesters with SWAT teams to try and intimidate people because of their speech. Your institution is the one that treated parents as domestic terrorists because of their speech. Your institution is the one that, according to the court, the FISA court, ran 278,000 unwarranted, probably illegal queries on Americans, right?
That's exactly right, everyone. The FBI has been completely overrun by the Democratic Party. If you try to protest anything that goes against the Democratic Party right now, the FBI will come knocking on your door. Just like these pro-life protesters, just like these parents that want to protect their children against the propaganda that is being taught in public schools right now. And another conspiracy theory that has come true, the FBI is illegally, allegedly I should say to protect myself here, surveilling American citizens. But what do they say? Well, look, if you got nothing to hide, there's nothing to worry about. Well, what happens if you support Donald Trump? And then all of a sudden they say, look, anybody that supports Donald Trump is now considered a terrorist. It's not about having anything to hide. It's about how the government can use this to enforce draconian measures.
Compliance, you would characterize the unlawful querying 278,000 times of American citizens as compliance issues?
We've said before, I've said that it's totally unacceptable.
Were you saying that the 278,000 queries were unintentional?
I believe that's correct.
Wow, 278,000 times American citizens' information was queried by your agency unintentionally? That's your testimony?
I would want to go back and check that, Senator. But
Well, that's what you just told me.
My understanding, likely all were unintentional.
Likely all. So first it was all of them, then it was vast majority. Now it's likely all. So you don't know is the answer to the question.
I don't know the answer as we sit here today, but I will
Could have
find out
started
and I
with
will
that,
get back to
probably.
you.
You're back in front of us asking for the reauthorization of extraordinary authorities. Multiple courts have uncovered extraordinary abuses perpetrated by your agency. You are at the same time concealing information about serious allegations made against the President of the United States, even as your institution also targets his chief political opponent in an unprecedented way. Why would we ever give you the blank check that you want to continue surveilling American citizens in an improper manner? Why would we ever do that?
We've made significant reforms and implemented corrective measures. We've seen significant progress as a result of that, Senator. The
So you
queries
say.
that you mentioned early were in fact unintentional. That's what I was just told by my counterpart.
That
Just to
is an
clarify
amazing-
the earlier question.
So your testimony is the 280,000 queries of American citizens was unintentional. That's your final answer?
That's how they were assessed by that team that did the review. I'm not satisfied with that. That's
Yeah, I
why
don't believe
we've
that at all.
implemented further measures, as I announced earlier today.
That's exactly right, everyone. We cannot give these powers back to the FBI because they've shown every single time you give them this power, they abuse it to the highest degree. And again, Joe Biden is using the FBI to now target political opponents. This is absolutely insane. Now, if they were investigating Biden as well, okay, that's fair. They're investigating Donald Trump. They're investigating Joe Biden. Fine, no issue. But it's very, very clear that they are protecting Biden and they're trying everything they can to bring down Donald Trump. And it's not just about Donald Trump. It could be anybody in his situation. And it's about the future. What happens in the future if there's another political opponent that wants to go against Biden, but he can use the FBI to find out what any kind of dirt on him they can? Does this sound like a free and democratic country to you? Well, guess what? Wait till you hear about the bombshell that happened at Fox News, and Tucker Carlson comments on this when they put out the report that Joe Biden is a wannabe dictator.
Hey, it's Tucker Carlson. On Tuesday afternoon, the Biden administration had Donald Trump arrested. It was a pretty big news story. You may have seen it. Just before 9 p.m. that night, as part of its coverage, Fox News ran 2 live video feeds next to one another. On the right, Donald Trump addressed his supporters in New Jersey. On the left, Joe Biden spoke at an event for the Secretary General of NATO in Washington. Beneath those videos at the bottom of the screen, Fox's banner read this way, quote, "Wannabe dictator speaks at the White House after having his political rival arrested." Those words were up for less than 30 seconds, but the effect was immediate. Inside Fox, the women who run the network panicked. First, they scolded the producer who put the banner on the screen. Less than 24 hours after that, he resigned. He'd been at Fox for more than a decade. He was considered one of the most capable people in the building. He offered to stay for the customary 2 weeks, but Fox told him to clear out his desk and leave immediately.
This is very, very worrying, everyone. Fox News before, when Tucker Carlson was working there, was considered to be maybe one of the last mainstream media news networks that would actually criticize the Democratic Party. But now the deep state and the puppet masters like Rupert Murdoch and George Soros have come into these companies, they've brought these companies out, and anybody that goes against their agenda will be taken out.
The Chiron was taken down immediately, Fox's PR department said, and then added ominously it was, quote, address. That was all true. It is, quote, absolutely unacceptable for American Forces Network to carry programming that directly, spuriously, attacks the commander-in-chief of American Armed Forces, Vindman wrote. In other words, Joe Biden must ban all criticism of himself because that's what non-dictators do. For the crime of calling Biden a dictator, Fox should be shut down, wrote the 80s era movie star. Quote, the government has to take away their broadcasting license, and so on. It was all over the internet. Democrats were very, very angry. But why were they angry? If the banner on Fox was false, why the hysteria? So you've got to wonder, if you're being honest with yourself, is Joe Biden a wannabe dictator? That question came up yesterday at the White House briefing. Here's how it went.
Last night, Fox News ran a chyron that referred to the president as a wannabe dictator, and I'm wondering if the White House has any comment on that.
So look, there are probably about 787 million things that I can say about this that was wrong about what we saw last night, but I don't think I'm going to get into it.
There's no comment the White House has on
I think I just commented.
What an absolute joke, everyone. She says, look, there's 700 million answers I can give, but I'm actually too stupid to actually give an answer, so I want to pretend like I have all these really high intellectual answers to give, but really I got no comment because, yeah, he does want to become a dictator.
No comment necessary. Of course Joe Biden's not a wannabe dictator. Just because he's trying to put the other candidate in prison for the rest of his life for a crime he himself committed doesn't mean he has a totalitarian impulse. Come on, that's absurd. It takes a lot more than jailing your political rivals to earn the title wannabe dictator. That's the consensus in Washington tonight. And in some ways, for once, the consensus may be right. It is not a small thing to be a wannabe dictator. It's quite a process. There are a lot of steps. First off, there is the money. The one thing that all dictators have in common is they enrich themselves and their families, their tribe, even as the countries they govern grow steadily poorer and more desperate. They take kickbacks from businesses and from other dictators. They use the official functions of their government to funnel cash to themselves. They don't bother to hide the fruits of this. They live in garish mansions with big lawns, far from the teeming cities, even as their own citizens languish in growing poverty, in some cases literally living in tents on the street. So they don't really hide it, it's all pretty blatant, and ordinary people resent it. Of course they do, and wannabe dictators know they resent it, but they don't care. There's nothing the population can do about it in a dictatorship. It's no longer possible to fight injustice in a system like that. People can't gather in large numbers to protest the rule of the dictator. If they try that, they'll be arrested by his state security service.
So that's right, everyone. Joe Biden hasn't received millions and millions of dollars in alleged bribes during his presidency. He hasn't become very, very wealthy. His son hasn't done lots of wealthy business deals. And him and the Democratic Party care so much about the poor and middle class. And that's not the reason why the middle class standard of living and the poor has been falling over the past 40 years. And that's not why we have a huge homeless crisis right now.
A visit for men in body armor at the breakfast table. That happened. And if citizens persist in believing they can gather in groups to protest, they may be shot to death. And then, just to make the humiliation complete, to make the lesson gin clear to everyone else watching, their relatives can be arrested for daring to complain that their children were killed for complaining.
This is another very, very worrying trend, and why I'm making this video and why I can no longer stay silent, everyone. They are trying to implement laws right now where you cannot protest. And what I saw in Victoria during 2020 and 2021 made me sick. People that questioned the COVID agenda, they were shot by the police with rubber bullets. They were shot down like dogs. And this is not just the US, really all Western countries right now keep on going down this path, trying to become more and more draconian, and may not be rubber bullets next time.
That's the message a wannabe dictator would send. And by the way, it's not just public protest that would be banned in a dictatorship. You wouldn't be allowed to complain from your own home. Unauthorized opinions expressed on the internet would be censored. Go too far, press too deep, tell too much truth, and they'll just erase your opinion. They have no choice, really. It's a matter, as they say, of trust and safety.
That's exactly right, everyone. That's what I'm so worried about. I'm risking everything by bringing this information to you and speaking up, giving my opinion, because the only way the dictator can stay at the top is by cutting anybody down that starts to rise too high. There's an analogy. There's grass growing in a field, and as soon as one piece of grass starts to grow up too high, or say, for example, wheat in a field, they cut it down to keep everybody level, and the dictator is at the top. That way nobody can challenge him. That way no one can question his authority. And Joe Biden and his administration has been caught red-handed working with these social media companies. They have portals, for example, they used to at Twitter. They have portals with Facebook, so they can go in, check social media posts. If you post something they don't like, they can take it down. That's why we have to fight for what rights we have left of free speech before it's totally gone.
You must trust the leader, or else you will jeopardize his safety. Not that you really can jeopardize his safety at this point. The leader has nuclear weapons, and you don't. He'll remind you of that from time to time. And in any case, you're in the process of being disarmed anyway, along with everyone else who has shown questionable loyalty to the leader. Those who support the regime can keep their weapons and use them freely, including on public transportation. That's a core civil right for them. But for those who dissent from the program, self-defense is an unaffordable privilege. Turn in your guns, Mr. and Mrs. Peaceful Opposition. You're a danger to society, and we know who you are. And in fact, the wannabe dictator does know who they are because he knows everything. Technology has made him all-seeing. A report in Wired magazine just this week revealed that the highly non-dictatorial Biden administration is busy tracking the phones of millions of Americans without their knowledge and without bothering to get a warrant. And at the same time, the same non-dictatorial administration is stockpiling a massive trove of damaging information about these same Americans, to be used at some point, we are sure, for entirely noble purposes.
How do we get to this state where the government is spying on you? They're using these devices to take every little piece of information they can have on you. So that way, if you ever try to rise up to get into politics, that way, if you ever question them and get, a big social media following, they can take any piece of dirt that they've allegedly illegally taken from you to use against you. But that's right, everyone. It's little by little, inch by inch, step by step. So that way you don't notice all your freedoms being taken away. But if you go back 20 years ago and tell people what the world will be like today, how much freedoms we have been lost, they would tell you you're crazy and it'll never happen. Well, guess what? They're about to take a whole much more, and you probably think I'm crazy for what I'm about to tell you and go over later in this video. But guess what, people? It is happening unless we take a stand right now.
So the administration now knows everything. Where you spend your days, who you talk to, what you think, not a big deal. The administration already knows what you buy, of course, because they've leaned on the big banks to turn over your confidential credit card information. Not because anyone here is a wannabe dictator, to be clear, but just because. It's nice to have that information, just in case, in the words of the Fox News PR department, a situation arises that needs to be, quote, addressed. If Joe Biden ever developed some profound physical or medical problem that was obvious to everybody, journalists would say something. This is not North Korea. We don't have state media here. If Joe Biden was, say, incapable of completing a full sentence, or mistook his sister for his wife, or suddenly started falling down in public for no reason, the New York Times would report on that and then get to the bottom of what was actually happening. That would be its duty in a free country like ours. It's not like they would cover it up. The very idea of a cover-up sounds like a conspiracy theory, a dangerous one, actually, so stop it.
That's exactly right, Ryan. How can Joe Biden be the most powerful man in the world, be the head of the United States, when he can barely walk off a stage? You see him when he's on the stage, he looks around for his handlers. He goes, where am I? Every time he sees an ice cream truck, he seems to run for the ice cream. Every time a little child goes in front of him, he seems to want to sniff their hair. This is all out in the open, and nobody's questioning it. Nobody's batting an eye. What have we come to in society? Well, that's right, because people like myself, if you raise these questions, if you raise these concerns, you'll be silenced in a moment. Well, guess what, people? Like I said, I will not be silenced any longer.
And by the way, if Joe Biden was a wannabe dictator, he'd have the family to match. All dictators do. Saddam Hussein had Uday and Qusay. They were princelings who lived above the law, indulging their most decadent fantasies with total confidence. They would be never held to account by the police. As the sons of a dictator, they knew they could do exactly what they wanted. And so that's what they did. There's no one like that around Joe Biden. He doesn't have weird sex scandals at the heart of his family that no one in the media will ever talk about. He doesn't have a ne'er-do-well former nightclub-owning brother who's made a living for 30 years by being related to him. Not at all. That's dictator stuff. Joe Biden doesn't award ridiculous inflated titles to his relatives that the media are then required to take seriously. He doesn't call people doctor who didn't go to medical school.
Again, something else is very, very shocking and shows how corrupt the Biden administration is, was the cover-up of the Hunter Biden laptop story. And still, nothing has come of it. We all know that the laptop is real and the stuff that it had on it. But of course, that was considered misinformation when Joe Biden was running his campaign, when now it's all been found out to be true. But of course, he's in the club, the big club, and you're not.
If he was a dictator, Biden's speeches would look like Nuremberg rallies. A blood-red backdrop, armed soldiers by his side, screaming about crushing his eternal enemies. Honestly, Biden did come close to that one time last September at a speech in Philadelphia. but it wasn't in any sense dictatory. It was necessary. As MSNBC assured us at the time, quote, Biden aimed to showcase his faith in the military apparatus and its ability to back the democratic order.
That was very, very disturbing, everyone. When Joe Biden did that speech with the military behind him, with the red, this is showing you that these leaders, these psychopaths, because it's a fact, politicians, most of them are psychopaths, most CEOs are psychopaths, and guess what? Throughout history, it's been shown that most leaders are called evil. And he came out telling you, if you're a Trump supporter, you're pretty much a terrorist and you're a threat to democracy. He just kept saying democracy, democracy here, throwing it out like it's a buzzword, when really he's the real threat to democracy. By their fruits, you will know them. Does he produce good fruit or bad fruit? No, he sure does produce a lot of bad fruit.
No cause for alarm. He is not a dictator. A dictator would stockpile ammunition for his own bureaucrats, including his tax collector. He'd redefine the legal code to make disloyalty to the regime the most serious crime. He'd claim dominion over the most intimate parts of his citizens' lives. He'd define what attitudes they were allowed to have about sex and religion and how to raise their families. He would even, in his final grandiose stage of dictatorship, claim ownership of their children.
So okay, everybody, like I said at the start of the video, we're going to get into the thing that I think is the most worrying. This is when I said enough is enough. I need to speak up to protect the innocent children, your innocent children that they're coming for. And if you love your children, if you're a loving, caring parent, you will speak up right now before it's too late, before they drag your children away from you, before they introduce these crazy, crazy laws about these certain people that seem to be attracted to younger people, and before that would have been illegal. They're trying to, slowly massage the people into saying that no, this is normal, this is okay. No, people, it is not okay, it is sick, it is evil, because what's one last thing these billionaires and these political elites can't get? They can buy anything they want, they can get anything they want, and yes, they can get it illegally, but the thing they cannot get legally is your children. But guess what, people? Wait till you see what Joe Biden just said.
And to prove he would never do that, Biden just this week released this video.
These are our kids. These are our neighbors. Not somebody else's kids. They're all our kids. And our children are the kite strings that hold our national ambitions aloft. It matters a great deal how we treat everyone in this country. LGBTQ Americans, especially children, you're loved, you're heard, and this administration has your back.
See? Joe Biden isn't saying your children belong to him like a dictator would. He's saying something very different from that. He's saying America's children are, quote, our children. Not his alone, ours. You share your children with Joe Biden evenly, right down the middle, with alternating weekends. You've got joint custody with Joe Biden, and you can thank heaven that you do. A nation is like a family. Every family has a head, a father. That's Joe Biden, our nation's father. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is now his fatherland. Just don't call it a dictatorship, or we'll have to issue a statement disavowing you.
Wow, people, I thought Tucker Carlson put it perfectly here. They are coming for your kids. Now, something very, very disturbing that has happened recently, there was a Call of Duty streamer that came out against this agenda, and all he said was, leave the kids alone. Now, just a year ago, that would have been very acceptable. Yes, leave the children alone. But no, he was cancelled. Call of Duty and activism cancelled him, and he can no longer stream the game. I don't know about you, everyone, but that tells me more than enough of what I need to know what their agenda really is. Because I've been watching over the past few years why these politicians, why the governments, why these corporations are forcing this LGBT or this alphabet community on everybody. Now, if you're gay, if you're lesbian, whatever, if you're trans and you do that in your private life, that's none of my business. You have your freedom to do that. I have nothing against that. What I do have a problem is the propaganda that's now being put in place with these politicians, being put in public schools, and being forced down consumers' throats by these ESG scores that these corporations are doing now. And even a lot of people from the gay community have come out against this as well. We have these organizations called Gays Against Groomers. They don't want this, but we have a very sick minority that does want it to become normal for adults to have a relationship with minors. And this is absolutely sickening, everyone. So you must take a stand now and speak up. You must make some sacrifices. Sacrifices of being judged. Sacrifices of being cancelled. Sacrificing of maybe losing your job. Because guess what? Our fathers and our mothers made the ultimate sacrifice, and we're going to have to as well as we enter the fourth turning. And this fourth turning is going to be a crisis, divisive era of secular upheaval, when the values regime propels the replacement of old civic order with with a new one. So everyone, if you love your country, if you love your family, if you love freedom, you must share this video, share it wide, and tell people enough is enough. Now, for my loyal viewers and subscribers still watching, you're awesome. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all in the next video.